Well, this is bound to be a controversial one. Billie Jean is one of the most consequential songs of all time, hands down. Whether you're talking about in the songwriting, where Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson blended several different styles of black music that really hadn't been done quite this way before, or if you're talking about the engineering, where Bruce Sweden used a ton of experimental recording techniques, or if you're talking about production and sound design across the board, but especially with the synthesizers, they had to design tones and layers that are basically presets that we take for granted today. Or even how Billie Jean as a hit single and as a music video basically blew the door open for African Americans, especially when it came to MTV, because they basically didn't play black music on MTV. Basically not a thing. Billie Jean and the entire Thriller record were absolutely groundbreaking and forever changed the landscape of music. So what better candidate to change the mix, right? Yes, I know, it's one of the greatest mixes ever done. I'm aware, I'm not stupid. But because I love remixing things, and because I love learning, especially when it comes to production and mixing, I wanted to take a crack at remixing this myself, and I thought it'd be really fun to dive into the details of this session. Just listen to this.
She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene. I said don't mind, but what...
You can hear Michael snapping into the freaking mic, which today would drive a recording engineer and a mixing engineer insane. The production and mix are amazing. There's no two ways about it. But I've always asked myself, what if we could hear a version with the 21st century level of cleanliness? Like, you can definitely hear Billie Jean was done on tape. Not the most pristine level quality of cleanliness that we have today. And that's not a bad thing, it's just a thing, okay? I was absolutely shocked to find the actual multi-tracks for this, like all of them split out. And when I was listening to them, I'm like, holy crap, these are super clean. Like, this could have been recorded yesterday. But unlike any of my other previous remixes, I actually have the opportunity to remix this from scratch, not just adjusting someone else's mix. And it was really incredible hearing just how excellently engineered this was. If you think it's sacrilege to remix such a classic, one, loosen up, this is just for fun. Two, they did 91 mixes of Billie Jean, and they wound up using the second one. Bruce Sweden did everything he could to avoid compression and EQ moves. He wanted to capture the absolute best source tone, that everything married each other instantly, naturally, so that way the song basically mixes itself. And you'll be able to hear how pristine this stuff sounds as we go through it right now. Okay, so I'm going to be playing the original mix off of Spotify. I was not taking the time to remix this the way that Bruce Sweden did, just because that would just take way more time than I absolutely need to. And because of the nature of how I have to capture off of this, you're not going to be getting 100% accurate mix of mine or of Bruce's. So if you want to hear my mix untainted, as untainted as it can be, there's a link in the description to a YouTube video where I have that mix uploaded, and you can compare the two mixes. All right, let's just look at the first verse. Let's listen to the original.
She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene. I said don't mind, but what do you mean? I am the one who would dance on the floor in the round.
Beautiful. It's the mix we all know and love. Fabulous. Now, my mix.
She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene. I said don't mind, but what do you mean? I am the one who would dance on the floor in the round.
Substantially different. Just to really highlight how different the mixes are, I'm going to hop ahead to the second pre-chorus and let that play partially through the second chorus. This is the original. Love this part. All right. Beautiful. We love it. It's Billie Jean to my mix.
People always told me, be careful what you do. Don't go around breaking young girls' hearts. But she came and stood right by me. Just a smell of sweet perfume. This happened much too soon. She called me to her room. Hey, the Billie Jean is not my lover. She's just a girl who claims that I am the one. But the kid is not my son. No.
All right. Big difference. Big difference. So the first thing you'll notice is that the tempo on the original is slightly faster and it's slightly higher in pitch. So what does that mean? Well, that means that they played the tape faster for some reason. So what you're hearing here is how they recorded it. And in post, for whatever reason, I don't know why, they just sped the tape up slightly, which when you speed tape up, it not only makes the song a faster tempo, but it also slightly raises the pitch. The faster you speed it up, the more the pitch increases. I'm sure most of us have experienced something like this. I, for the life of me, could not find anything anywhere explaining why they did that. I don't know if it's because that's just how it transferred and it transferred slightly incorrectly, or if they wanted a slightly faster tempo. I mean, it does have a really cool groove to it with a little more energy at that tempo. I kind of dig that, but I also kind of like the other tempo too. I think they could both work. Or it could also be the fact that they just wanted to have the song take less time. I mean, there's a lot of longer pop songs on here for sure, which is cool for the time, but like today would not fly, sadly. Those are the only three possible explanations I could possibly think of, and I don't know what else it could be. One of the things you'll notice is that my top line is much more prevalent in the mix, much more forward. His backing vocals are obnoxiously loud. They're super, super, super loud, and I don't know why he did that. I was actually considering making my background vocals even quieter than what I currently have them, but it did lose some energy in the arrangement. Honestly, it really did. And frankly, I've always been a fan of loud background vocals anyway. Just really bizarre that the background vocals are like substantially louder than the top line. It's a really weird choice. Another substantial difference you'll hear is while his strings are more separated than mine are definitely more present in the mix. His guitar is very present in the mix, and I actually made that more of a textural thing in the chorus. It just seemed to make the most sense since I'm already like maxing out everyone. I don't see the reason to try and max out the guitar there, especially since we have enough going on to pay attention to. Just let it be texture. Yeah, just let it be feel and groove. A big reason why all of his stuff feels so separated and also feels like either very loud or very quiet is because he did very, very little compression on anything, and I did substantially more than he did. Not a ton. It wasn't like super abusive, but definitely more than what Bruce would have ever signed off on. I'm really happy with how my mix turned out. Again, if you want to listen to that whole mix, you can check the link in the YouTube description below. And the biggest reason why it turned out as well as it did was just because he had such beautiful source tone capture. Just absolutely annihilated it. Now, before we dive into the tracks and look at how beautiful this production really was, I want to show you some fun things that are in this session. So if we come here to the beginning, like, oh, there's a Rhodes keyboard playing a note, and then a bass plays the note right after. Almost like they're checking tuning or something. I couldn't for the life of me find out if they all played this at the same time or if they had the track people separately. It seems to me at least the bass and the Rhodes were recorded together, but I don't know. And then here you can hear the talkback pop on, and you can hear Bruce Sweden say,
Billie Jean, take one.
So that is printed to the kabasa, the toms, the claps. So those at least were done in one take. The lead vocals, these amazing lead vocals that are timeless and iconic, these guys.
The queen from a movie scene. I said don't mind, but what do you mean now?
Those were also one take, which is insane. Then if we take a listen here again to the lead vocal, let's just solo that up, and I'll take off my processing here so you can just listen to it. Michael Jackson, dear Lord. In my mix, that's still there. That's still in there. Gee, I wonder why they left that out of the final mix. I have no idea. Just listen to this.
She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene. I said don't mind, but what?
You can hear Michael snapping into the freaking mic, which today would drive a recording engineer and a mixing engineer insane. But back then, it was just Michael Jackson having fun being Michael Jackson, and I kind of loved that so much. Like here, take a listen right here.
You always think
Snaps.
twice. Don't think twice. She told my baby we danced to 3. Then she looked at me.
So you get 3 snaps there, and then nothing. He stops for a little bit. In my mix, if you listen,
She told my baby we danced to 3. Then she looked at me.
you can hear the snaps in the mix, and I love it. I love it so much. Almost like instead of pretending to be absolutely perfect and flawless, it's just a bunch of people in a room making music who just happen to be amazing at making music, but they're still people. I love it. I love how organic and literally real this is. Oh, and since we're talking about Michael Jackson making weird noises, I'm thinking he's the one that recorded the Kabasa, because I can't imagine anyone else in the entire world making noises like this. I threw on an EQ curve so you could hear less of the Kabasa and more of the mouth noises, but just freaking. There he is. Oh wait, there's more. That's horrifying. What is that? What in the like what is that sound? If that's someone else, I would love to know who made that sound. But all right, let's get into some of the details of this production. Let's start with the drums. Let me pop the drums up here and just give you the drums with no mixing on it whatsoever, just raw what was recorded. That sounds fantastic. Like, it sounds so good. I'm even gonna mute the Kabasa because we don't need that right now. Just such a consistent performance. All of the freaking hits are just delicious. 100. It sounds like a machine. It sounds like a MIDI map. This is a real drummer from the 82. It's so good. It's so clean. If you know anything about drum recording these days, you usually try to minimize bleed as much as possible. Let's just take a listen just to the kick drum. That's not too bad of bleed. Which, by the way, they recorded that kick with a 421, a Sennheiser 421, which I was really surprised about. Now the isolated snare. That's an insane amount of bleed. That has hi-hat, that has kick drum, that has everything. It's as if that's the mid-range foundation for the whole sound, as if he wanted to treat it that way. And if we listen to the hi-hat track, I mean, there's still bleed from both the kick and the snare in there. They're not the worst, but I mean, they're very present. But when you throw just those 3 together, it sounds really good. It still all works fabulously, and they are perfectly in phase. They are perfect in phase, which is nuts. And if you'll notice here on the cymbal and tom tracks, you can hear a hint of the bass, a hint of the other drums coming through, but that's because they're coming through the guy's headphones. So they recorded the toms and crash cymbal separately. There's no overheads on these drums. And it sounds so freaking satisfying immediately. Now what I did, a little bit of compression with the SSL, and I did the amplified instrument processor. I did a little bit of a push at 800 because I'm a madman. And I did a little bit of a push at 117 because that's where the fundamental of this kick is. So I'll do without my processing. and I'll do with my processing. Really punches through. Really hefty now. If we take a listen to the snare, I did a roll off in order to just get a little bit more of that kick information out of there. I did a little bit of compression with the SSL, and I also, again, used the amplified instrument processor. This time with a few different EQ moves than before. I actually tried to bring a little bit of the low end of the snare back, but I also did run it through the proprietary signal processing. So this is snare before, snare after. So you may think that's harsh, and I agree, but let's marry it all together. That's some really nice, sizzly, high attack, high transient style drums that, again, Bruce might not be hugely in favor of, but I kind of, weirdly enough, wanted to replicate a bit of that 80s type of bite on there, and I feel like that kind of did it. I did some other things with the other instruments as well, but essentially, I ran all of those through a drum bus and did a little bit of processing on that, added a room. So this is my drums running through all of the processing. That feels good. That feels nice. Little synth white noise coming up here. Little guy. Let's get to a section with some claps so you can hear how that layers. Spicy. Like, feels good. Here's what my drums sound like versus what the original drums sound like. There is something to be said about that original drum mix because you instantly recognize it. And that's specifically what Quincy Jones told Bruce Sweden with those drums. I want to hear a drum sound that has never been heard before that you will instantly recognize. And he nailed it. He nailed every time you hear those drums, you know it's Billie Jean, even though it's playing the most basic drum part of all time. You hear the drums and you're like, Billie Jean, not even a question. Next, let's quickly check out the bass. The bass is pretty interesting, honestly, without any processing on it. And actually, that's not with the proper balance. That's the proper balance that they had initially in the mix. The synthesis really high up. This is where I pulled it down to. I wanted to get something more of a real bass character. I love real bass synthesizer. I just can't with it. I'm sorry. Which is sad because they actually spent a ton of time trying to dial in a really interesting bass tone. This is actually 4 separate sounds. So this right here, just like this first track, that is a very muted bass. And then on the is actually a mini Moog synthesizer just quickly emphasizing those notes, which is also hilarious because however they captured it, they're getting some serious distortion on the low end. Listen to it now, like here. Now that you know it's there, you'd thought it was just like having the bass a little more open, but that would be a different timbre than what you're hearing. They actually, again, supplemented it just a little bit with a little bit of little bit of push with a mini Moog. This guy is 2 different synthesis styles. Anthony Marinelli programmed the bass sounds, and he made a whole video explaining how he dialed all that stuff and what they were looking for and how this really hadn't been done before. So definitely go check out that video. There will be a link in the description. It's really cool. So that's the original stuff. Now let's listen to it as I have mixed it. Yeah, feels pretty good. Still gets plenty of that bass synthesis in there, but I feel like it's a little more like a real bass, you know? So let's take a look at some of the synthesis. You guys will recognize this for sure. Recognize them? I did nothing crazy to alter these other than just a little bit of balancing, which I think they're all the exact same. Okay, no, they're not all the exact same, but they're pretty close. I did my own little balancing between these 4 layers, which I'll show you what those layers are. And I just did some cutting and some compression just to get them out of the way of other stuff. I did nothing that was like, holy crap, this completely changes the fundamental character of what we're listening to. So if we go down the line, we got this guy. Kind of a semi-string kind of a thing, or almost like a little bit of like a vocal character to it. We got this guy. That's a real vocal character. Kind of cool, kind of throaty. Then you got this guy. Little horn. Then you got like a second horn here. Like, that's cool. I dig that. Now, the layer you guys didn't know existed is actually a vocal layer. Frickin' Michael. Michael's singing along with this bad boy the entire time. So if I bring in this synth layer without the vocal, with vocal, subtle, but it's there. And that is smack dab in the middle, while all the synthesis is on the side. So it kind of gives you like a wall of sound type of thing. And weirdly enough, if you listen to the original home demo from, I believe it was 1981, Michael Jackson's ooh oohs are like super hot in that mix. So that was like always a thought to do this from the beginning. Then he has his own specific layer for these little swells here. These guys, those little guys. Or like over here. Or like over here. Love it. We got the pre-chorus here. So we got a few fun things happening at the pre-chorus. Just take a listen to it on its own. Love these boys. Love it. Love it. So you got a Rhodes piano. Usual. Nothing crazy going on here. Just, you know, delicious, classic. I have that not super wide, but not dead center. And then they have this guy, which I love the sound. The sound is so cool. I think it's so great. That's like, I don't even think that's in the original mix. Let's just try and like listen to it really quick. It's not there. You have all of the Rhodes over here, and you get the Lyricon, which we're gonna get to here shortly, all the way over here. That's it. You don't get that really nifty, cool, like, I love this thing. I guess they just decided to nuke it for whatever reason. All right, now let's listen to it with. It's subtle, but it's there. And that little bit of extra energy that's underneath of there. And then last, let's talk about the Lyricon. So for those who don't know, the Lyricon is an electric wind instrument. It's kind of like the precursor to the Roland Aerophone, if you know what that is at all. It's not MIDI, but it's some kind of, I don't know what it is. I'm not even that familiar. But it basically allows a person who's used to playing wind instruments to be able to pick up this thing and have electric sounds come out while using your breath and your natural lip motions as a way of controlling how the timbre reacts, whether that's loudness or whether that's some type of articulation or whatever. So let's just solo that up really quick. Like, I always thought that was a real trumpet. It's actually an electronic instrument. That's so cool. Love that. And especially if we get over to this section, you'll really hear how fake it is. Like, I would have never guessed it was a fake instrument, you know, not an acoustic instrument. This is how electronic it is. That's some 80s Stevie Wonder shit. Next, we come to the strings, and the strings just sound so good. Let's just listen to the strings. Cinematic, clean, beautiful. And then over to this guy. I have a reverb on them, just a heads up. I'll take the reverb off. Reverb on. They sound great. They sound fabulous, man. The biggest thing that I did was widen them. I mean, I definitely did some mid-range brightening as well, but that's a whole other thing. I'm not going to talk about that right now. So if we listen to these just by themselves, and we take a look over here, I have the violins panned hard left, I have the cello panned hard right, and I have the violas basically in the middle. And that would simulate the 3 microphones that he used to capture this. So let's mute the viola. Okay, that's wide now. Okay, that's cool. Now let's bring the viola back in. Suddenly, it pulls things closer to the center. Why does it do that? Because of the bleed in the microphones. If all of those instruments were perfectly isolated and played by themselves, you wouldn't have the stereo picture collapsing when you brought in that 3rd middle microphone. But you have bleed everywhere, so if you have that happening, even if you pan it super wide, it's going to pull it closer. So I had to use a stereo imager to get it wider. If I bring up this guy really quick, this is off, and this is on. Much wider, which in this mix, trust me, you want that. Next, let's take a look at the guitar. The guitar is beautiful. Love this. Didn't do anything too crazy with it. Okay, maybe I did some crazy things with it. Okay, never mind. But this is just such a fantastic performance. It's a beautiful strat tone. Already by itself, it sounds great. I don't know how he got this, like, instant delay, slapback delay effect. So Bruce Sweden liked to record just about everything he possibly could in stereo. And I don't know how he pulled that off exactly, but he did it, and it sounds really cool. I mean, we're going to be talking about that also when we get to the vocals. But man, he did this. I would love to know what the technique was to be able to get it so perfectly in phase. It sounds really good. Again, this is just same guitar performance. You can almost hear like a little bit of reflection there. It's such a cool character, and it's all natural. It's all done acoustically, not with effects processing. All right, last, let's take a look at the vocals here. Okay, so this is the raw recording of the lead vocal track.
She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene. I said, don't mind, but what do you mean? I am the one who would dance on the floor and around.
All right, music nerds, audio nerds specifically. What microphone is he recording through? Don't look it up. The answer is the SM7B. Well, the SM7, not a B, but yeah, the SM7. Yes, even for the early 80s, that was a bold choice. That's not a thing people were expecting. And it sounds great, especially now. Let me add my mixing stuff back.
She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene.
Deliciousness. This is with the processing off.
Yeah, don't mind, but what do you mean?
Then on.
The one who would dance on the floor and the round.
And that verb.
She said, I am the one.
My verb was much more subtle on this than Bruce's. I did a bunch of things to these vocals. So the first thing I did was saturate it. I used the hip hop puncher, which uses a clean tube. I did a little bit of a roll off with the EQ. I'd used a de-esser. I used the RVox compressor. I used this guy, the SSL channel strip, to do a little bit of EQ work, a little bit of compression, nothing crazy. Used the RVox again. Used Type A, which is a secret weapon. The Audio Thing Type A is an absolute secret weapon as far as getting a pop top end. And then just did a few little ducts to kind of get that boxy character out of the voice. Basically trying to compensate for the SM7. So I'll turn off the Type A and the last EQ filtering I did, so you can just hear that.
She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene.
And this is with those on.
I said, don't mind, but what do you mean? I am the
Again, off.
one who would dance on the floor and the round.
And then turning those back on.
Who would dance on the floor and the round.
A little bit more scooped, actually. A smidge more scooped. And it also helps bring out the warmth of Michael Jackson's voice, what little bit there is of it. So in the mix.
She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene. I said, don't mind, but what do you mean? I am the one.
Sits great. Did essentially the same thing for the background vocals. Then you got your little, like, your spice unit over here, just doing random noises like this.
Oh no.
Just, you know, the things like that are like this. Just packed with Michael Jackson weirdness. But specifically, you know that "don't think twice," that whole thing. This is what that sounds like. Just one of them.
Don't think twice.
That's a weird sound. What is that? That is Michael Jackson singing through a 6-foot tube into a microphone. That is wild, dude. And he did it again.
Don't think twice.
He actually did it twice from a different distance so that when you play them together,
Don't think twice.
it's a natural delay.
Don't think twice.
Instead of having two microphones capturing the same source, he had the same microphone in the same spot in the same room and had the source move, and he turned up the gain on the input to make sure that it matched the original, so you got that effect.
Don't think twice.
That is awesome. Now you add some reverb to it and a little bit of processing to sit in the mix, and you get this.
Don't think twice.
That is sick. That is so sick. So in the whole mix.
Twice. Don't think twice. Shit.
Mind blowing. So just letting this play back just to enjoy it, just to have fun with it.
The kid is not my son. No, no. She says I am the one. But the kid is not my son. No. She says I am the one. But the kid is not my son. No, no, no. Ooh. The Billie Jean is not my lover.
I'm so happy with this remix. I was afraid it was going to be trash, and it actually is very enjoyable to listen to. And huge thanks to Eric Hill for mastering this and just taking it that extra mile. Not to mention him and Finn McKenty giving me a little bit of mix notes on my first one that actually helped me get the width more correct and wider. Yeah, this turned out great. The biggest thing to me was just learning more intimately what a real engineer does, you know? Not what we do today. It's not remotely the same. I mean, not talking shit on modern engineers. They're still incredible, and some of them really do know the real ins and outs of capture and all doing things all acoustically and everything. But so many of us, me especially, are riding off of generations of exceedingly hard work. It's easy to just be like, oh yeah, I'll just drop this plugin on there and it'll fix it. You know, like, no, that's not engineering. It's not saying you can't get a great result, but it's not engineering. So I wouldn't call this a remix to fix anything. It's not fixing anything. It's just a different take on Billie Jean. And I really like my take. I still love the original. And the original is still, like, obviously stood the test of time, changed everything. You know, like, can't talk crap on that. But I really do like the modern just crunch, just a little bit of oomph comes out of that one. I like a little bit more compression on the vocals so I can hear more of the detail. I like the main vocal being more forward. I like the bigness. You feel like you're being enveloped by it now. You know, it's, I don't know. I really like the new mix. Would love to know your guys' thoughts. Please let me know in the comments down below. The hardest part about making this video is trying to decide what I specifically wanted to emphasize, and I still don't even know if I fully did or not. I just had a really good time doing this. It was so cool. It was so educational. I had so much enjoyment out of getting to sit down with these tracks and get to mess with them and get to hear the original and like try and hear what was going through Bruce's brain and reading all these articles and interviews. It really was just so enlightening to me. I really, really enjoyed this. I would love for this to do good views, but you know, these days, who knows? And frankly, who cares at the end of the day? I had a great time, and I really hope you guys learned something. I think there's so much to learn from this, and just to dig into all of the details and to know that these are just real human beings playing this, and they did a friggin' fantastic job with it. And to make such bold decisions on the drum mix to get something that is instantly recognizable but doesn't sound like what you would consider like a full body drum kit, you know? Anyway, thank you guys. I love you. Oh, and if you can, support me on Subscribestar, link in the description. I can mix your stuff if you want me to mix your stuff. All right, love you guys. Stay fantastic.